Loose ends. I've learned to calm myself by clenching my fists. What? I've learned to calm myself by clenching my fists, Stanley White said with a strange smile. And that makes me better than you. Eric stood still for a moment and then took a step back toward the wall. He gave a sideways glance at Freddy, whose Adam's apple bobbed in the flesh of his neck with each dry swallow. How does that make you better than me? Eric asked with an arched back. He tried to keep his repose around Mr. White, but he could feel his shoulders loosening and the muscles in his stomach growing tighter. We're a lot alike, Eric. When we both grow angry, we clench our fists. But how we use them differs, White explained, keeping his gaze with Eric strong. When you curl your fingers, you're only channeling your anger. You perspire, flex your muscles, stand upright, and grind your teeth. This is human nature, so I won't blame you. I am better than you because I can make a fist and regulate my heartbeat. I can remain calm and even smile. He broke off to show his yellow teeth. I can remain a cool customer even in the toughest situations. Unlike you, Eric, you can only veer off into a blind rage and lumber at your enemy like an ugly gorilla. The cords began to pop out in the hollow of Eric's neck, pumping and pulsating with violent adrenaline. There he was with his arms parallel at each of his sides, and at the ends were pale rocks. So what do? Eric spat. White only grinned. My hands are not weapons. A weapon can clean out a person's skull, he concluded, folding his arms. There was a long silence. Freddy and Eric stood in profile in front of their boss, as if they were in a straight police lineup, waiting for the verdict on who was guilty and who was not. White was placed between them, eyes running them up and down, measuring each inch. You guys are ganging up on me. White's smile was gone, and what replaced it was something like that of a dog's mouth. Eric could put his hand out to that dog's snout, but he wouldn't know if he could keep all his fingers. Me and Eric got to talking. There's too much at stake here. We feel like there's some loose ends we can't ignore, Freddy said. Well then, Freddy, let's get all this out in the air, shall we? White threw his arms above his head as if he was holding an enormous weight above him. His suede jacket rose above the cleft of his belly button, revealing the butt of his pistol tucked into the waistband of his jeans. Let's knot up all these loose ends. We appreciate that, Freddy replied without the faintest waver in his voice. He could keep eye contact with Stanley White and not even flinch. He'd known White for 30 years, and in all the time he'd never once backed down from White or avoided his eyes once. Inside the abandoned warehouse on the corner of Federal and Palm Street, White took a step away from his partners and turned into the dull glow of his battery-operated camping lantern. He placed his hands into his pockets and spat into the sawdust scattered across the dusty, splintered remains of the floor. He lifted his head to gaze upward at the gaping skull of the building and inhaled deeply from the musty, dusty air. He let it out, that same strange smile creeping at each corner of his mouth. He suddenly looked different. There were more shadows draped across his features and an intoxicated swagger to his steps. He kept that tooth-filled grin. I don't understand, White practically whispered. I thought I explained all this. If I didn't, I apologize. Let me clear everything up for you. My uncle's grave was filled a week ago this Friday. Everyone has already forgotten about that dusty old fart. If we visited his grave tonight, what would we see, Freddy? A grave, he shot back at once. Well, yes, but what makes his grave different from all the rest, Eric? Eric considered for a moment and then said, Fresh dirt. Bingo. What we'd see is a pile of fucking dirt. We're not going to give my uncle time to sprout grass and weeds over it. That's our dirt, boys. If we were to dig him up and pour the soil back over the box, it'd look exactly as it did before we started digging. It'd be a pile of dirt. White crossed his arms again, raising his eyebrows, to further press the point hanging in the musty, dusty air. This is about covering our tracks, that's all, Freddy replied. A pile of dirt, Freddy. That's all it has to be. That's not the problem. Then what is? Are you afraid of pawning the pieces? White asked. The collector down in Longshore wants the pieces just as much as I do. No, Freddy began, chewing on his words. We don't. Well, the problem is... We don't want to kill the guard, all right? It's not necessary, Eric snapped. So here lies the problem. White sighed, scratching his head. Murder. Your consciousness can't deal with that ugly, ugly word. Is that right? Both men nodded in unison. Let me put it this way, boys. When we hit the cemetery on Monday night, the only thing standing between us and our treasure is the watchman. The only way to make sure he doesn't talk is if we bury him along with my uncle. I don't see why we can't knock him out and tie him up, Freddy said. Okay, apparently you haven't been listening to me. There was that temper again, flaring up like the flame on a new candle. If we tied the guy up, the next morning he'd tell the cops a group of men with shovels roughed him up and entered the graveyard. Then we'd have pigs snooping around the place, and they'd find footprints, shit like that. Somehow all signs would point to my uncle, and then I'd have police knocking on my door. Anyone with real cause to take the family treasure would be someone from his own family, White finished, hooking his thumbs toward his chest. But if we made sure to cover all our tracks, the police shouldn't come looking for you, Eric said, and Freddie nodded in agreement. You don't get it, he closed his eyes and clenched his fists. The sheer idea is that men with shovels enter a boneyard. What does that mean? Grave robbers. Police will eat that up. The cemetery knows a man was just buried with a variety of expensive trinkets, and all they need is the man's gravestone to record his name. Then they'll go from there. You're going about this the wrong way. We should sneak into the cemetery without even worrying about the guard. I bet he sleeps the whole night anyway, Freddie argued. And be looking over our shoulders all night? White cried. It's just an idea. That's what we're doing here. We're coming up with, alternatives, Freddie said. Do you realize how much thought I put into this plan? My uncle was buried a month ago this Friday, and we're set to dig next Monday. Even before I called you, I had this all charted point for point, and I'm not going to change it just because you boys are having a panic attack. Do you know how long I've been waiting to get my hands on these heirlooms? Yes, Freddie replied. Your entire life. Ever since I've known you, your great-grandfather's pocket watch was all you ever talked about, and his war medals. They were supposed to be mine. As the last descendant of the White family line, I deserve them. My uncle was a selfish man, and even now as he begins to stink, he is a selfish man. Even though White fell silent, his haunting voice rang in the dilapidated building, bouncing above their heads. What's more selfish than selling your family heirlooms to some pawn shop? Eric said. Fuck you, White spat. From now on, Freddie speaks for you. We're the ones talking, and you're just here to look pretty. Hey, I'm just trying to help you. You needed an extra man to dig a grave, and here I am. I don't give a shit what you think. This is my plan here, and it's perfect just as it is. I was the one that did the research here. I was the one that met with the collector and had my family treasure valued. If you want that 800 grand split 3 ways, you'll do things my way. Bullshit, Eric cried. You need us and you know it. It'll take all night if you dig that grave alone. By sunrise, you'll barely have enough strength to push the guard's body into the grave after you. If you talk again, it'll be your body I push into that grave. Kiss my... Just breathe here. Please, Freddie screamed, throwing himself between them. He's only trying to help. We've known each other a long time, Stan. You can trust that I chose Eric for a reason. How many jobs have we done together, huh? We're petty thieves. That's all we've ever been. All we're good at is cracking safes. To put money before human life, it's meaningless. Answer me this. When was the last time we worked together? 10 years? I've changed a lot since then, White said. You didn't change into this, Freddie argued. You're not a murderer. Just listen to my side, okay? White paused to see if either of them would interject. When they both remained silent with their hands at their sides, he continued. All right, we find out who the guard will be that night, approach him before he gets to work, and finish him off. There's no guard on duty when the cemetery is open, so it's his job to close the gate for the night and watch the place until the sun comes up. When the police search for him the next morning, there's nothing that connects his disappearance with the cemetery. Think about it. His time card isn't punched, the gate's still open, there's no one to say they even saw him at work, and there's nothing in his office that hints he was there in the last 24 hours. So the cops decide he didn't even get to work, and they start to search his home and where he was last seen. There would be no need to investigate the cemetery at all. He gave them another bright smile. So you want to haul his body to the graveyard and carry him around all night until we can dump him in the hole? Eric asked, shaking his head. White gave a silent nod. Murder is murder, Eric said. No, it's not, White laughed. This is reasoning. I'm sorry you feel that way, Freddie responded. I'm not. I'm thinking logically here. This way no one has to know. We kill the poor slug and then he gets buried in the same hole we have to dig anyway. And then he gets buried in the same grave we have to fill anyway. It's flawless. Think about it. Listen to you. Kill the poor slug and no one has to know. You haven't killed a wild animal, let alone a human being. What makes you think you can do it? Freddie pressed. White grinned, withdrew his weapon, and pointed its nose into his friend's face. Freddie backed against the soiled wall, palms out, eyes bugging out of their sockets. He tried not to stare into the muzzle of White's gun. Instead, he looked at his own feet, choosing his next words carefully. Before he could say anything, Eric had already opened his mouth. For God's sake, he's your friend, Eric cried. White whirled around to point the gun at Eric, who yelped and ducked to the floor. Huddling against the wall and hiding his face in his hands, he peeked between his fingers to see that White was a black silhouette in the lamplight, a dark giant that waved in and out of the glare with a rocking laugh that shook his entire frame. Stan, please, Freddie yelled. I tell you to bring someone trustworthy into this job, and this is who you choose, White said. Look at him, cowering like a child. You're pointing a gun at him. He's the reason you're backing out, isn't he? He's swayed you, made you soft. So you're gonna kill him? Freddy cried. Is that it? Fred stopped laughing and stared into Freddy's eyes, the gun still focused on Eric's body. His glare pierced Freddy, invaded and accused him. At first, Freddy saw the boy he once knew inside that stare, temporal and quiet. Then the eyes suddenly flashed and Freddy met the new Stanley White. The Stanley White that had given him a phone call only a week ago, after 10 years of disassociation. When he had laid eyes on the new Stanley, he hardly recognized him. His hair was thinning and gray, the cheekbones on his face were all too apparent, and the oversized jacket he wore weighed down his shoulders. 10 years had passed since they last spoke, and here came Stanley White, out of the shadows, with a scheme up his giant sleeve to get rich. What had changed Stanley in all those years? He still had his temper. That was something he could never shake. But he still wasn't the same. This man chilled Freddy. Freddy's eyes darted to the gun and then to the gnarled finger wrapped around the trigger. Stanley pulled back the hammer on the pistol. Eric whined in the corner, but White didn't take his eyes off of Freddy. He waited for his friend to say something, to challenge him, and stand up to him one last time. But he wasn't expecting those 3 simple words to resonate from Freddy's vocal cords. And when they did, something inside him snapped. Who are you? Freddy asked. White's face crumpled and the hand holding the weapon slowly dropped to his side. Without a word, White gathered his lamp and went for the door. Before he reached the exit, he spun back around, but neither Eric nor Freddy could make out his features or determine if he was pointing the pistol at them again. I forgot to load it, White said. He took his time in tucking the gun into his waistband. He switched off the lantern, allowing for the natural sunlight to creep through the cracks in the walls to line the floors like prison stripes. So, you're out. It was more of a statement than a question. Yes, replied Freddy. Eric didn't even look up from his hands inside the fetal position, but Freddy spoke for the group. Well, I'm going through with the job, he said. I need to know that you'll keep quiet. We won't say a word. The figure in the doorway seemed to nod. I guess I'm on my own. There's no time to find a new group by Monday, he said. Only it was more to himself than anyone else. I've waited too long. Can't put it off anymore. I'm sorry, Stan. He still refused to leave. He continued to sway next to the door as if in a drunken daze, awkwardly waiting for someone to challenge him a second time, so he may have a chance to reassert his authority. I'm better than you, he finally said to Freddy. Yeah, I bet. It's got to be nice to have no principle. Are you kidding? It's great. Look at your disgusting pet on the floor. He would love to tear my throat out, I know. I, on the other hand, wouldn't waste a bullet on either one of you. I feel sorry for you. Don't. We're all going to hell. Then the door cracked open and light filled Freddy's senses, causing him to squint heavily and turn away. When he gathered himself and glanced back into the warm daylight, Stanley White was gone.